Hello, good evening, and thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Blake Burman. Crossing into Mexico, our Brian Entin, just returning from south of the border. What he found in the search for Nancy Guthrie, as there are questions tonight about Mexico's help. And in the Middle East, on the clock. President Trump giving Iran a deadline to make a deal as the U.S. surges its largest military force in that region since the invasion of Iraq.
They must make a deal. Bad things will happen if it doesn't.
Also this evening, ice cold. I talked to one of the most talked about Democratic governors about his decision to limit ICE in his state. Maryland's Wes Moore also tells me tonight when he thinks he should work with the White House.
I will work with anybody, but I won't bow to anybody.
More of my interview with one of the rising stars in the Democratic Party and a royal reckoning, a former prince, Prince Andrew, under arrest as the Epstein files fall out, now crosses the pond. But first tonight, mixed messages from across the border. Leaders in Mexico's second largest state saying tonight they haven't heard from the FBI, even as NewsNation is told the feds have contacted Mexican authorities in the search for 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. It fits seemingly a pattern here, as seemingly every day or close to it, we get a different story from authorities, depending on who you hear from. So our Brian Entin went to see for himself, crossing into Mexico and just returning back. What, if anything, do they know about the case there? Brian is back from Tucson with us live as we kick it off tonight here on the Hill. Brian, so you went south of the border, returned on back. Who'd you speak to? What'd you find?
Yeah, you know, there's been some mixed messaging, Blake, from authorities when it comes to the Mexico connection. Yesterday, we had FBI sources telling us and confirming that the FBI has been having conversations with Mexican authorities. Today, Mexican authorities said, yes, those conversations have happened, but there's no evidence right now that Nancy is in Mexico. But you can't ignore, Blake, how close Mexico is to where Nancy lives. I mean, it takes like an hour to get there, and you can just, I mean, people don't realize this, you can just drive right in. No one even asks you any questions. You can walk right in. It's not like coming into the U.S. where you get stopped. So it would be very, very easy for someone to take Nancy into Mexico and for no one to even notice. Granted, there are a lot of cameras. What was interesting, though, Blake, is almost everyone we talked to had no idea who Nancy Guthrie was, despite us being right on the other side of the border. It's like the biggest story in the world, in the United States. But right when you cross the border, most people didn't even know about the Nancy Guthrie story. Listen to what some of the people told us, Blake.
La secuestraron o está perdida en Tucson.
This is the picture here.
He said that he's not aware of the case of Nancy.
Has she ever heard of it? No, never heard of it? No.
Nunca he escuchado nada.
No, nada.
So you saw there, most of the people we talked to hadn't heard of the case. Some had seen it on social media. But what was interesting is many people kept pointing out the cameras. Even though you can drive right into Mexico and the Mexican authorities don't stop you, there are a ton of cameras. So you would imagine if they can get a vehicle description and they believe that that vehicle may have gone into Mexico, they could go back and review the camera footage, and that could prove to be very, very helpful, Blake.
Brian, I'm in our here at NewsNation because a new update quite literally was just dropped into it, and this comes from the Pima County Sheriff's Office. If you want to follow with me here, they say it remains an active investigation as long as leads continue to come in. Investigators will continue to follow up on them. Currently, several hundred personnel are assigned to this case from various law enforcement agencies and are actively reviewing thousands of leads. They say lab analysis continues on biological evidence found at the residence. To be clear, this is not new or different evidence from what was already recovered from the property. No further information at this time. That just coming in, Brian.
Yeah, so sort of more of the same. I mean, they're continuing to investigate leads. What they said about the DNA evidence in the house is somewhat interesting to me, because that to me is going to be one of the most important factors here. I mean, the glove, it seems like they've basically ruled out, but there is the stranger's DNA inside the house, and that's what we know they have started the genetic genealogy testing on, you know, like kind of like what they did with Koberger. So that could end up really being huge here, but that's going to take time. That kind of testing, it can take weeks. Sometimes it can even take months.
All right, as the news warrants, back to Brian Enton later in the hour if we learn more. Brian Enton back from Mexico with us tonight. Brian, thank you. Now over to the White House. And the commander-in-chief today putting Iran on the clock.
So now we may have to take it a step further, or we may not. Maybe we're going to make a deal. You're going to be finding out over the next probably 10 days. I would think that would be enough time, 10, 15 days, pretty much maximum.
Comes as the administration pursues an agreement of some sort with the country, whatever that might look like. And as the commander-in-chief deploys the most American firepower, get this, in that region since the invasion of Iraq 23 years ago. Retired Brigadier General John Teichert with me in a moment. But first, out to our Libby Dean live over at the White House. Libby, the president talking about this all throughout the day today. And we got a couple different timelines there.
Yeah, Blake, and the midterms top of mind for the president today during that visit to Georgia, spending his time talking about affordability, the economy, tariffs, a bunch of issues, those all shaping up to be this major issue in the upcoming elections. But as you mentioned, looming over this trip really in its entirety is that potential attack on Iran by the United States as the president weighs his options there. But the president also setting the stakes today. Let's take a listen.
Now is the time for Iran to join us on a path that will complete what we're doing. And if they join us, that'll be great. If they don't join us, that'll be great too. But it'll be a very different path.
That warning comes after the second round of nuclear talks Tuesday that we were speaking about, and amid that massive U.S. military buildup in the Middle East that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. And Iran also preparing for this potential hit by the United States. They're writing in a letter to the United Nations Secretary General, we just got this, that if Iran is attacked, all bases and assets in the region are considered legitimate targets. So that's Iran's response tonight that we just got. And the timeline, actually, Blake, set by the president today, giving the clearest indication of how this could go. He set that a 15-day max to make a deal there for Iran. But just yesterday, we saw those national security advisors here at the White House. They were told those U.S. forces wouldn't be in place until mid-March. So that deadline, actually, that the president set today, Blake, comes before those national security advisors were told that the military buildup would actually be complete there, Blake.
Libby Dean, live for us over at 1600. Libby, thank you. With us now. Here in studio, retired Brigadier General John Teichert, back with us to break it all down. Hello, sir.
Hello, Blake.
Thanks for being here. It seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to get too far ahead of things, obviously, because the stakes are so high here. But when you talk about the largest movement of assets to the region since the invasion of Iraq, is it your assessment tonight, General, that this is when and not if at this point?
Blake, I firmly believe that the diplomatic window closed 2 days ago when Iran did not negotiate in good faith. And now the president is taking his time to make sure that the military is properly postured offensively and defensively so he can achieve his objectives in the region.
How big is this? I mean, I see the carrier, I see all the other destroyers, the battleships, and what's not on here is that the Gerald R. Ford is probably coming in there off the coast of Israel at some point.
Blake, there is a baseline 40,000 American military members already in the Central Command area of responsibility. And now we see the addition of the Lincoln from a few weeks ago and the Ford that will be in the Eastern Mediterranean and ready for combat operations in about a day or so. So this is massive.
The question then is why, right? Like if, and I stress if, the commander-in-chief decides to strike, why? Why does he feel? And I want to show the images. I want to show 3 images. Let's stack them all next to each other because this is near one of the Iranian nuclear sites, and we put them all one next to each other. Can we get them side by side by chance? If not, I'll walk you through them. So what you see, go back to the first one real quick. Just pause it back to the first one if we can. Here we go. All right, this is another example, which is this is what happened when it was destroyed. And now you see how they're trying to build it up. And I can show you images of before, during, and after. And it begs the question, if that was obliteration, quote unquote, and this is the now, is Iran trying to build this back up? And that is why the commander-in-chief is saying no, no, no.
Blake, more importantly than what's going on in the surface is what's going on under the surface. No doubt that we've got intelligence sources that tells us what the real state of their nuclear program is, and that likely would be driving the president's actions far more than what we see superficially on the surface.
But he said obliteration. So what do you mean by real state? of a nuclear program, like, is it possible that it wasn't, quote unquote, obliteration?
No. Back to what happened in June, I think it was functionally destroyed.
Okay.
And that means centrifuges gone, storage of enriched uranium gone. Maybe now, based on these surface images, that's not quite true. But again, what goes on under the surface is what really matters to the state of the Iranian nuclear program.
All right, so let's talk about the timeline here today, because President Trump talked about 10 days, and then he talked about 15 days, right? So clearly here, some sort of end decision is coming. But I wonder if you're going to strike, or if you're even going to potentially strike, why do you say, you know what, if I'm going to do something massive that we haven't seen in 20 plus years potentially in that region, here's the timeline? Why do you give away the timeline?
Blake, I think two reasons. Number one, we've seen the president give timelines that don't necessarily match with what he's thinking as far as the limits of a diplomatic solution goes. But number two, the more we build up forces, the stronger negotiating position we are in, which means that maybe the president is still hoping for a deal, but I don't think he's going to get anything from the Ayatollah, who's standing firm on their nuclear program and the ballistic missile program as well.
Real quick.
How would you have answered the question that she was asked about whether the U.S. should support Taiwan if they're ever attacked by China?
Well, I would have just said that it's none of your business right now, because I wouldn't answer that question anyway. I wouldn't respond to a question like that. That's war. When it comes to war, you don't talk about your strategy.
That obviously President Trump today, but Lindsey Graham, General, said today the decision hasn't been made, but all these ships aren't coming here because it's nice this time of year.
The military has given the president a huge amount of options by the force that they've assembled. We don't know what the president's going to decide based on his objectives, but no doubt the military has been told to array a posture so that the president can take this as far as he wants to go.
Retired Brigadier General John Teichert, I got a feeling we'll be talking to you in the coming days, sir. Stand by. Thank you so much.
You got it. Thanks,
All right, still to come. By the way, I should note, it's worth pointing out the U.S. has up to 40,000 troops stationed within reach of Iran's ballistic missiles. So when you think about, some sort of potential strike, consider that the most amount of troops are stationed at the Al Udeid Air Base, which is just 120 miles from the coast of Iran. Other side of the break, the data center debate taking center stage across America, how lawmakers are stepping in as residents complain of higher electricity bills. Plus, my one-on-one interview with Governor Wes Moore of Maryland, who weighs in on cooperating with ICE.
There is a disconnect right now between that type of local constitutional policing and what we are seeing from ICE.
He's being talked about as one of the ones to potentially watch in 2028. Full interview later in the show. I'm Blake Burman. We're back in 4 minutes when you return. All right, you see that? That was the scene in Claremore, Oklahoma, a man getting detained during a local meeting about a proposed data center in his community. It's the latest flashpoint in what's becoming a nationwide conversation, and in some spots, a nationwide battle over AI. As those massive data centers pop up in communities all across the country, residents who live near them are blaming rising energy costs and the massive centers for energy consumption. Now get this, there are now more than 4,000 data centers in this country, all across, you can see here. Virginia is leading the way with nearly 600 alone. That's according to the Data Center Map website that tracks this stuff. The Virginia Democratic Congressman Suhas Subramaniam joins me now. He represents the district with the highest data center presence in the country. This is in his backyard there in Virginia with us tonight here on the Hill. Congressman, thanks for being with us. I should note for our audience, you are as pro-tech as they get, because you were in the Obama administration as the technology policy advisor. There's many in your party who are anti-data center. So as a Democrat who's pro-tech with the largest amount of data centers in your backyard, where do you come down on this?
Yeah, I am pro-tech. I'm a tech optimist. I'm someone who thinks we actually need to build a lot of data centers, but we, one, can't build them on the backs of utility ratepayers. paying for all the energy infrastructure, to we have to recognize that this is a massive undertaking and we can't be haphazard about this. I mean, talk about the energy. The data centers in my district alone are twice as much as Washington, D.C., given where we're going now. It's going to double.
You mean when you put them,
like
when you put them all together, the size of them is bigger than Washington, D.C. proper?
They take up more power than Washington, D.C., absolutely. And then they're 20 to 25% of our energy consumption in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. And people's energy bills are going to double in the next 5 to 10 years because of the energy infrastructure needed to build them and maintain them. And so this is a massive undertaking. So
when people get their energy bills and all of that around their house and they see them go up, is it your belief that they should immediately go, it's the data centers, that's why I'm paying more, or is there more than that?
It's not always the data centers. There's some communities that don't have any data centers and their utility bills are still going up. But when data centers are built in a community, they take up a lot of power. And so you need more power lines. Maybe you underground them, which costs even more money. But you need more power generation to power those data centers. But what's unique is the data centers are not paying for that power infrastructure in many cases. Now, there's some exceptions. There's some companies that are starting to say that they will pay for that energy generation, which is great. And that's a great step in the right direction. But right now in places like Virginia, the ratepayers, your utility bill, you are a ratepayer, you have to pay for the energy infrastructure. And then sometimes those poles, those lines go right through your home or through your school, through your parks. And so in our case, it's going through the historic Manassas battlefield. So I've written letters about that. And so you're double, triple penalizing people for data centers. And so we need to be more strategic about this.
All right, so here's both sides of the argument. I want to play it, and it comes from two very prominent figures, Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders. Here it is.
We're leading everybody by a tremendous amount. The electricity is being built by them in every plant. They're building the electricity. We're getting them rapid approvals. But they're spending trillions of dollars.
I will be pushing for a moratorium on the construction of data centers that are powering this unregulated sprint to develop and deploy AI.
So as a Democrat there, are you with Donald Trump? Build them, make them pay for the power, and does Bernie Sanders have it wrong?
I don't agree with either one. I think Donald Trump. I think a data center moratorium, if you want to usher in emerging technologies and harness the power and potential of AI and blockchain and others, you have to build data centers somewhere until we have an alternative to be able to store that data. On Donald Trump's front, if you haphazardly just deploy them without any sort of community input, then you're going to have communities like mine rise up in anger against them, and then you won't be able to build them. Forget permitting. Local governments won't approve them anymore. That's where we're getting to in our community. And so you have to work with communities. We have to have a holistic approach to siting, to energy generation, and we can't just be haphazard like this administration has been so far.
All right, I put you down as skeptical for both. I'll tell you, by the way, because the congressman's district is not far from our studio, and when you drive it and you get out by some of the more rural communities, you'll see these massive buildings in spots you normally wouldn't think, and they're the data centers. Whether you agree that we need to double and triple, quadruple down or not, that's just the reality in his backyard. Suha Subramaniam, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Consider this, by the way, the average data center in the U.S., I talk about the size, is about the size of 2 football fields, but uses the same amount of water as 2,600 households. Just something to think about. Still to come, red state versus blue state, and the stance on ICE. As one state cracks down, the governor of Maryland ends cooperation when it comes to ICE and immigration. I ask him how that could impact the 2028 presidential race and the Epstein files, bringing an arrest to a former royal. And some believe he could be just one of many facing a coming reckoning. Bottom of the hour, some of the top stories coming into our newsroom tonight is President Trump aboard Air Force One this afternoon, commenting on the search for Nancy Guthrie.
I didn't like when they were talking about going after the pacemaker and before they even started going after it, they're coming and reporting it. So if in fact they could do it that way, the person would say, well, I'm not going to let that happen, right? So bad things would happen if he did not going to let that happen. I can't imagine why they would have done that.
Sources are now telling NewsNation that the FBI is in contact with Mexican authorities as it now stretches into the 19th day of that search, and it expands beyond U.S. borders. The home where Guthrie was taken is located just 60 miles north of Mexico. And across the Atlantic to the U.K. now, a royal shock. The former Prince Andrew arrested on suspicion of misconduct while in public office. His arrest stemming from the connection to Jeffrey Epstein, and comes after the Justice Department released millions of files in that case. In the files, emails show Andrew apparently leaked trade secrets to Epstein. King Charles, Andrew's brother, releasing a statement saying the law must take its course. President Trump weighing in as well.
I think it's a shame. I think it's very sad. I think it's so bad for the royal family. It's a very, very sad. To me, it's a very sad thing.
We're on it both at home and abroad tonight. Hillary Fordrich, British Royals commentator, with us in a moment. But first to our Joe Khalil and the reaction today up on Capitol Hill. Joe?
Yeah, Blake, the reaction we're seeing most often is if there's that level of accountability and arrest at the highest levels of the social and governmental life in the UK, why not in the United States as well? And we're hearing that from some Republicans and Democrats. Congressman Ro Khanna, who's been at the front of sort of pushing for more transparency, suggested why not Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, resign over the Epstein files after it was shown that he actually traveled with Epstein to Epstein Island. Republicans saying the same. Congresswoman Nancy Mace taking to social media today to ask the question, in the UK had the courage to make arrests. Why hasn't anyone in America been arrested? So it's pretty clear, Blake, there's going to be more pressure now on the American Department of Justice and members of Congress to push harder for potential prosecutions. We know the files, although many are still redacted. Members of Congress can go and see unredacted versions. Much of that leading to more transparency. It is moving slow, but steadily forward in that direction, Blake.
Joe Kay, live in the Capitol hallways tonight. Joe, thank you for reaction now from across the pond. Hello tonight to British Royals commentator Hillary Fordrich with us this evening. I thank you for staying up and being with us tonight. It is obviously a massive story, the story where you are this evening. Hillary, take us behind the scenes. How did this all unfold today, and what's the reaction across the UK?
Well, thank you for having me. And actually, I'm an American by choice, and I'm based in America, but I am English.
Welcome.
Yes,
welcome
thank you.
All right.
I am English born and very close to many who are with the royal family and etc. So I do keep very in touch. And so I shan't speak for the entire nation. No one can. But I will say this. In the opinion polls just recently taken, only about approximately 28% of the British public approves of the way the royal family has been handling this. And so this statement by King Charles this morning was extremely important. It was better late than never, in my opinion. And that was him stating, as you mentioned, that he would be wholeheartedly behind the investigation. What's interesting from his statement is what wasn't said. He didn't say my brother, and he didn't say a member of our family. It's always important, the actual wording from the royal family. So we know there, really, Prince William is very much, from the outset, he's squeaky clean. He has had zero tolerance from the outset on this.
What are the chances now that Andrew talks, or that Andrew reveals anything in some sort of potential investigation?
Well, he was arrested this morning at 8 a.m. on his 66th birthday up in Norfolk, and they kept him for almost 12 hours. He was left out of the police station at 7 p.m. And this photograph that you're showing our audience, that was taken with him leaving. And you can see that's a photograph that will go down in all of our memories, right? Seared into our memory, this disgrace of a once immensely popular prince. So what does this mean? Will he actually have told them everything? That I don't know, but he will have had to answer questions. And obviously, he will never have any return to the royal family, certainly if Prince William has his way, because he has wanted him ousted. Hence, he was ousted from his home in the evening from Royal Lodge at Windsor, because Prince William wanted him in no proximity to the royal family any longer. Stripped of his titles, stripped of his honours, and there's no rehabilitation whatsoever.
It sticks out to me, as you know tonight, that the king didn't even call him his brother.
Right.
Fascinating.
Or even a member of the family.
Yeah, member of the family. Wow, fascinating as you see it all play out. Hillary Fordrich, Thanks for being with us tonight. Appreciate the perspective and the insight. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Hillary. All right, over to Lewis in Maine now, where victims of a 2023 shooting are pleading with the city to do more for the victims after they say money intended for survivors landed in the hands of some Somali-linked nonprofits.
I was shot 5 times that night. I lost my finger, I lost my bicep, my tricep. You guys can't hide it. Still needed to heat the house. Still needed to feed the family. Still needed to pay a mortgage to have a place to live. The money you guys raised is missing.
That plea follows a NewsNation investigation that found nearly $2 million of the $6.6 million total in relief donations intended for survivors and victims' families was instead distributed to 29 nonprofits. Meantime, live look over at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, where our Tampa affiliate WFLA is reporting that in just a couple hours from now, NASA will test out its Artemis II rocket in prep for its future mission to the moon. The fueling test is called a wet dress rehearsal. That's what they call the thing. It simulates a launch with 2 walkthroughs of the 10-minute final countdown to ensure that the rocket systems are performing as expected. Well, Democrats doubling down in defiance of ICE. And moments away, I asked the Maryland governor, Wes Moore, whether it's about policy or if it's about politics. Wes Moore is an interesting one. He is being talked about as a 2028 presidential contender. I asked him about that as well. The governor from Maryland here on the Hill in moments, plus the president today in Georgia. Mick Mulvaney on that. In Oklahoma, the governor there, Kevin Stitt, now defending the suspension of 122 students in his state who walked out of school protesting ICE. The Republican describing that as quote-unquote truancy. And tonight, another prominent governor taking a different stand. The Democrat from Maryland, Wes Moore, defending his decision to ban law enforcement, or limit it at least, from cooperating with ICE. Governor Moore is seen as a rising star within the Democratic Party, a possible 2028 presidential candidate. He's in town for meetings with his colleagues, and I spoke with him about that decision and his relationship with President Trump. Thanks for joining us, Governor. Appreciate the time. You made some news the other day with signing the non-cooperation agreements with ICE into law in your state. Explain why.
Well, because it's really about, I don't think that ICE should have the ability to deputize our local law enforcement to do the job of immigration. I'm very clear that our local law enforcement will continue working with federal officials when it comes to violent criminals, when it comes to rapists and murderers and pedophiles, et cetera. But our local law enforcement are very well trained, and they're accountable. And what we're seeing right now from this new variation of ICE is that we are deploying people into neighborhoods who are untrained and who are unaccountable. And I do not want to subject local law enforcement, who I believe in and are doing a remarkable job driving down violent crime in my state. I do not want them to be deputized to work for a law enforcement agency that has now gone from $10 billion annual funding to $85 billion in annual funding without measures of accountability that's attached to that.
There's a lot of discussion about your personal future, as you know, and where you may go from here politically. I know you're not going to break any news on 2028, but this is going to be an issue that's going to be talked about. And there's some within your party who are calling for abolishing ICE. Whoever ends up being the presidential candidate for the Democrats in 2028, do you think they should support abolishing ICE?
No, I think when you're looking at what is happening with ICE right now, there's not a alignment between what the organization's intent is and what's actually happening within society, where we are watching now what is the 13th largest military force by funding in the world. I mean, ICE right now is bigger in funding than the FBI. It's bigger than the ATF. It's bigger.
What's the daylight between abolish ICE and sort of what you did in Maryland?
Well, no, I think there needs to be accountability for all of the agencies. And I've been very clear. Public safety is my #1 priority. I mean, it's the reason that in Maryland we've had the largest drop, amongst the largest drop in violent crime anywhere in the United States of America. Since I became the governor, violent crime is down nearly 50% in the state of Maryland. We know how to deal with violent crime in the state of Maryland. And it's because we have great local law enforcement who are accountable, who are trained, and who actually work with the community. And there is a disconnect right now between that type of local constitutional policing and what we are seeing from ICE.
It's tax time. We're actually right across the street from the IRS. We're not far down the road. There was a recent poll that showed, give or roughly 6 in 10 in your state believe that they are paying too much in taxes. And there's a conversation about affordability, cost of living, and all that. We're seeing your colleague, Governor Hochul, in New York with a pretty interesting conversation with Zohran Mamdani, the New York City mayor, on whether to tax the rich or to raise property taxes there, potentially in the city. Who do you think has it right? How do you view this issue?
Well, I mean, I look at what we've done in the state of Maryland, where we have now, this is the 4th budget that I've introduced since being governor, that is a balanced budget. And if you look at the budget we have for this year, it has 8% in the rainy day fund, and a very healthy 8% rainy day fund. We don't raise taxes nor fees on the people of the state of Maryland. And we continue having a general fund, which is smaller than the year before. Every year since I've been the governor, I've actually decreased the size of the general fund. So basically saying in Maryland, we need to learn how to do more with less. And so I just...
Should Mamdani take up that sort of do more with less?
Well, I think if you look at what's happening in Maryland, I think that is an example of what I believe in, right? What I believe in is that you need to be both fiscally disciplined, but also making sure that the people of your state can have big aspirations. But I just don't think you need to choose between those two things.
Let me leave you with this, because as I mentioned, you've been in the news a lot and involving President Trump. We're right down the road from Maryland. A lot of your constituents live here. You're a governor of a major state. What do you believe your responsibility is to work with the current president of the United States and to push back when you feel that you need to? How do you view that balance?
Well, my obligation, and what I've always told the people of my state, is that I will work with anybody. If you just look at the past, a couple weeks ago, I actually helped to lead a delegation of both Democratic and Republican governors to the White House to talk about PJM and our regional grid operator. And we called for a 2-year cap on energy prices, and they came back and have given a 4-year cap on energy prices. So we have shown I will work with anybody. 97% of the legislation that I've introduced as governor that's been passed has been bipartisan in the way it's been passed. But I won't bow to anybody. And I think what is happening, whenever I see attacks on our state, whenever I see attacks on our people, that I'm a soldier by training. I'm going to defend my people. And that is the thing, and that's the ethos that I always will take when it comes to defending Marylanders.
Governor Moore, thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Thank you so much.
Governor Wes Moore joining us earlier today. All right, still to come. Other side of the break, President Trump on the road out in Georgia. What took him there today, the former district of Marjorie Taylor Greene, what the president had to say, and was he in full campaign mode? When we return, other side of the break, full panel here with me. Tia Mitchell knows a thing or two about Georgia. Mick Mulvaney knows a thing or two about Republican politics and the president. And Hannah Moldavin with the DNC. Look at these folks. Other side, 4 minutes out.
What word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability. Because I've won affordability.
How about that? President Trump roamed Georgia, northwest part of the state today, highlighting his administration's, as he sees it, economic successes ahead of the midterms. Full panel here with me now. Tia Mitchell, D.C. Bureau Chief for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Hannah Moldavin, DNC Deputy Communications Director. And Mick Mulvaney, NewsNation contributor, former Trump White House Chief of Staff. Hello to you all. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. You know a thing or two about Georgia, covering it for the AJC. The president goes down there today. And it seemed like he was in full campaign mode, and he went to a district that was Marjorie Taylor Greene's seat, a seat that she won by 28 points last go-around.
Yeah, so I think he's there because the special election is underway to pick a successor to fill her seat for the remainder of the term. He has endorsed someone in that race, a former district attorney named Clay Fuller. He also went there to talk about his tariff policy and to basically say, tariffs are a winner. They create jobs. They're good for America. And so he picked a business in the district in which to highlight that policy. So I think it was a mixture of both. Yes, he wanted to talk about tariffs specifically, but also he did use the opportunity to champion both Clay Fuller and some other people who are running for office in Georgia.
What are you all seeing in Georgia over at the DNC with Donald Trump going there today?
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic he goes into Georgia to talk about jobs, right? Georgia lost 80,000 jobs in the first year that Donald Trump was president. And he's underwater when it comes to the economy, 59% disapproval. That's the lowest approval rating he's had for the economy in both of his terms in office. So he knows, and Republicans know, they have damage control to do when it comes to the economy. Tia mentioned tariffs. American families are paying over $2,000 more a year because of Donald Trump's tariffs and inflation. Democrats are on offense on affordability. Donald Trump is on defense, and we see him trying to rectify that.
Does it worry you, him going there?
No, it doesn't. I'm not sure Democrats are on offense, but I would agree that he's probably a little bit more on defense. He's got some rough numbers in the polling. They've got some decent economic numbers coming out. They're hoping things turn around. A lot of the dereg agenda should kick in, and a lot of things from the one big beautiful bill should kick in between now and the election. But yeah, they're on the back foot. There's no question about it. This is not a race they're going to lose. That's not the reason that he's down there. I don't think this race is, anybody here would think that Democrats have a chance in Marjorie Taylor Greene's old seat. It's to what you mentioned. This is about making sure his person wins the special, and also about sort of laying the foundation for what the Republicans hope are a lot more trips to Georgia, because he needs to spend a lot of time down there, because it's going to be a lot of the battlegrounds will be in that state.
Speaking of wins, he said, I've won on affordability. You haven't heard that word recently. The Trump team will say, look, Dow, hit 50,000, 130 jobs created in January. Gas is under 3%, but Americans, Mick, as you know this, say, you know what, not for me.
Voters are going to decide that answer. Who wins on affordability, we'll know on election night. Donald, again, he's got some arguments. He's got some arguments against it, but you're never going to convince people that what they feel is wrong. This is what Republicans said about Joe Biden when he was saying, oh, our problem is messaging. It's what Democrats are saying about Donald Trump now. Oh, our problem is messaging. The voters will decide that.
What do you say to that there with the Dow, job growth, and gas prices?
I think that we know who's winning on affordability because Democrats are winning. Since Donald Trump was elected into office, Democrats have won or overperformed in 90% of key elections by 13 percentage points. We're winning in places like Georgia in 2025. We won 2 statewide seats for Georgia Public Service Utility Commission.
That was the power race, right?
That was the power race.
Right,
They're talking about high prices.
Is like the biggest issue, yeah.
I mean, people feel these high prices when they get their energy bill. These are things that you can't tell voters one thing is happening when they feel the high prices.
All right, we talked about that race being the single most important race. Actually, there's 2 of them in Georgia that night. The biggest races that no one's talking about, because it was 2 Democrats who won seats that Republicans had dominated statewide in Georgia. That should have been one of the early red flags for the Republican Party.
All right, so that's the Republican side of it. Let's move on over to the other side, because we also got some news today that Abigail Spanberger, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, is going to be giving the Democratic rebuttal for the State of the Union address, Tia, on Tuesday. She's the first woman to have to be the governor there in Virginia. She's someone that is going to be highlighted. That was like predictable. I don't know predictable, but like if we all gave 10 names, it makes sense. We all probably would have thrown that name out. Here's the unpredictable, because last night on this network, Stephen A. Smith, Chris Cuomo, Bill O'Reilly, roll it, and the backdrop here is Stephen A. Smith continuing to talk about a possible 2028 run.
I think you should run, and I'm being serious now. And Trump opened the door for you.
If I decide to do it, I'm telling you, I intend to win. Make no mistake about it. I won't do it unless I believe I have a legitimate shot to win it.
So where do you think the Democrats are tonight after putting Spanberger up as the speaker, and then you got Stephen A., who's not even, who's saying maybe I'm doing this?
I think the difference is Trump did pave the way for a non-traditional, non-political candidate to win. But I think Trump has also paved the way to reinforce the fact that maybe this is not the type of person we want as president. And you do not see Democratic voters clamoring for Stephen A. Smith. Matter of fact, you see a lot of Democratic voters who say, Stephen A. Smith, please sit down and stay home. So I think that's the difference. Now, that being said, can he raise a lot of money? Does he have a platform? All the things that help political candidates? Could he possibly build a coalition, perhaps not just with Democratic voters, but maybe with disaffected male voters that we know are very swingy and somewhat frustrated with the Trump administration? Maybe, and maybe that could help him get a leg in. But if you look at just Democrats, he is not necessarily someone that rank and file Democratic voters are saying, I would vote for that guy. They're not really talking about him in that way.
When we played the interview, Mick, with Governor Wes Moore there, you said, that's a guy to keep an eye on. Where do you think the party is right now as you look across on the other side of the aisle, given...
They're doing the same thing we're doing. We're just trying to figure out, all right, what do we want to be when we grow up? We're getting ready.
What do you mean by that?
Both both going through generational change. By the way, Stephen A. Smith should run 2 years ago, when both parties were offering septuagenarians, and our third-party candidate really could have, I think, had some traction. But we're both looking at generational change. The next candidate's going to be somebody roughly my age, late 40s to late 50s. And with Trump, what we're trying to figure out is, are we going to be sort of the establishment, centrist, moderate, reasonable party, or are we going to be the left-wing, right-wing populist party? That's where I think both parties are trying to figure out where they are.
What do you make of Stephen A. and sort of the spectrum right now that you're looking at it from your perch over at the DNC?
I mean, at the DNC, we run the process for presidential primary. So I am not dipping my finger in those waters. We want whoever the Democratic nominee is to win. What I will say about Abigail Spanberger is that choice is somebody that came into Congress in the midterms in 2018 when Trump was first elected president. She knows what people want, and she won by crazy margins. I think it was 15 points. Biggest margins in 60 years in Virginia. She ran on affordability. Day one in office, she signed an executive order that said, I want everybody in my administration to figure out how to make life more affordable for Virginians. That is who the Democrats are putting up, and I think it's telling in terms of the presidential race. I'll let everybody else duke it out.
All right. When you look at the odds, the betting markets, Gavin Newsom leading 31%, AOC behind the only other in double digits. Stephen A., 3%.
I will go on record and say I didn't realize he was going to be a Democrat. I had no idea. I had no idea what party he was.
Who knows what he ends up doing? He also referenced he makes a lot of money, and it might be hard to give that up. By the way, winning young voters going to be the key for whoever wins in 2028. People under the age of 45 will constitute the majority of American voters. I thank you all for being here. Thanks so much. And I thank you for watching us tonight here on The Hill. I'm Blake Burman. I send it on over now to Elizabeth Vargas, who takes it over from here.